He laughed until she played. CEO's shocking reaction makes headlines at 3 a.m. The clock struck 3, and the city was alive with whispers. In the heart of downtown, the sleek, glassy tower of the Meyer Corporation shone ominously in the night. Inside, the atmosphere crackled with an energy both strange and alluring. Shadows flickered and danced against the walls as the clock hands moved inexorably forward. Who would have thought that laughter could mask such horrors? It started as an innocuous game night, a simple escape from the drudgery of quarterly earnings, but when Sylvia sat down at the grand mahogany table, something shifted. The mood darkened. Her delicate fingers brushed against the edge of the playing cards, the pattern etched in darkness pulsing like a heartbeat under her touch. The laughter first bubbled up, bright and airy, the room's tension momentarily shattered. But as Sylvia played her first card, a chill wound its way down everyone's spines. Is this a joke? The CEO, Henry Meyer, chuckled nervously at first, but the laughter quickly turned to an uneasy silence. The whispers grew louder, rippling through the crowd like a wave of electricity. Sylvia's playful expression suddenly twisted into something unreadable, her eyes flickered with a hint of something sinister. Sensing the tension, those gathered leaned closer, their breaths caught in their throats. The laughter had died, leaving only a heavy silence filled with disbelief. Then came the moment that ignited the headlines. As Sylvia claimed her first victory, Henry's face paled, the intercom crackled, and the lights flickered ominously. A surge of panic ripped through the room, and each person felt the pulse of dread quicken. They had come for fun, but what they found felt inevitable, like the approach of a storm. Then, just as quickly as it began, all went dark. Shadows loomed, and gasps filled the icy air as the brilliance of laughter faded into a haunting echo. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash the like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the lights flickered back on, a collective gasp escaped the crowd. Henry stood frozen, his eyes wide, mouth agape, as if struck dumb. The whispers grew more frantic, rushing through the room like wildfire. Sylvia's demeanor shifted, her smile barely hiding something far more dreadful. What had she revealed? What game were they actually playing? More than a game unfolded in that room as minds raced and hearts pounded. The CEO's heart threatened to burst, not from joy but from fear of the unknown. Was this a beginning or an end? No one could tell. All that was certain was the chilling laughter that had seemed harmless, now echoed like a siren's song beckoning them into darkness. What secret lay hidden behind that first card? What would come next? As the air thickened with uncertainty, eyes darted around the room, taking in the expressions of the others. Fear mingled with confusion, and a desperate need for answers tugged at the edges of their minds. The glow from the overhead lights seemed to filter through a haze of dread, painting shadows that lurked by the edges of the wall. "Henry?" whispered Martha, one of the executives, her voice trembling. "Are you okay?" He shook his head slowly, as if trying to rid himself of the impending doom that had enveloped him. Just moments ago, he had been the picture of confidence, cracking jokes, and making light of the moment with over-the-top theatrics. Now, he was a man on the brink, straddling the line between disbelief and terror. I think we need to leave," he finally stammered, his voice wavering. The tension was electric, his words hanging like a noose, tightening around their throats. The table felt suddenly too small, the room too large. Whispers escalated into frantic conversations. Sylvia remained quiet, an unnerving calm washing over her expression as she watched the chaos unfold. It was as if the game had shifted into something far more sinister, the stakes immeasurably high. "Stay where you are," came a shout from the back of the room. Mark, the head of security, had burst through the door, eyes scanning the crowd. "We have to secure the building. Something's wrong." Panic erupted, people scrambled for the exits. The uproar of fleeing footsteps echoed against the glass, merging with the cacophony of raised voices urging calmer heads to prevail. Yet, the silhouettes of their panic blurred into shadows, and darkness crept back, as if eager to engulf them once again. Henry's heart raced as he struggled to ground himself in the chaos. He turned to Sylvia, who remained eerily still at her seat, a slight smile creeping along her lips. What was wrong with her? How could she harbor such composure in the face of sheer terror? What did you do? He demanded, fear boiling into anger. The room fell silent, all eyes on Sylvia now, including those of the fleeing employees. She finally broke her silence, her voice lilting as it wrapped around the tension like a snake. It's just a game, Henry, she said. Don't take it all too seriously. The more you resist, the harder it gets. Her eyes glimmered with a knowing light, as if she was privy to secrets that were far beyond anyone's grasp. Get out of my way. He pushed through the crowd and grabbed her wrist, but she only laughed, a sound filled with a sharpness that pierced the chaotic backdrop. Leave, if you want. But just know the game doesn't end here. Her words dropped heavy, echoing off the waning shadows. A hum of electricity crackled in the air, and just when it felt like the world should be falling apart, a small part of it decided to shift. Henry's breath caught as images flickered to life in his mind: the room, the stacked cards, the faces around him. It had all begun to replay, twisting into a dark web he never asked to enter, and then, the light stuttered again, plunging everyone back into darkness. Voices were swallowed by murky silence, replaced only by the sound of breathing choking on fear. What had just happened? What sinister truth lay behind her words? As their minds grappled with the horrors at hand, one alarming thought raced through Henry's panicking heart: would anyone make it out alive? The clock ticked menacingly, counting down to their next move. Just when they thought the nightmare couldn't deepen, it did. What was the next card Sylvia would play? What hidden truths would their laughter reveal? The darkness pressed in like a heavy blanket. Henry's skin prickled with the pulse of anxious energy that seemed to rally around him, a collective breath held in anticipation. He could feel the presence of others by him, bodies shifting, the once sterile air now thick with terror. Mark? Someone whispered, desperation lacing their voice. The sound dissipated into the void, swallowed by that ever-growing silence. Henry gripped Sylvia's wrist tighter, a futile gesture against the chaos of rage that coursed through him like fire. The lights flickered again, leaving behind a trail of afterimages that danced on the back of his eyelids. A muffled sound rose above the rest, a whisperer from the unknown: what are we doing? Get it together. Mark's bark cut through the dark, a beacon of authority fighting against the tide of panic. It was unsettling, hearing his composure now. We need to regroup. Regroup? The thought sent a shiver racing down Henry's spine. How did they regroup when they didn't even know the rules? The game Sylvia was playing felt as humorless as it was absurd. Follow me. Mark yelled, his voice the only anchor in this squall of confusion. The room flooded with whispers, a wave of reluctant agreement. One by one, they inched toward the door as if it were a lifeline, but Henry hesitated. He couldn't let Sylvia go, not with that smile still etched on her face. It's not real, Henry. It's all a show, she said, her tone a disturbing mixture of soothing and mocking. Don't you see? The more you resist, shut up. He snapped, shaking her lightly until her expression shifted, and the amusement vanished. For a fleeting moment, vulnerability cracked her facade, and he regretted showing that strength. Fine, she hissed, but let us see how long you all last when the shadows come alive. With a guttural groan of uncertainty, the group stumbled toward the exits, Mark leading the charge. The flickering emergency lights cast eerie shapes on the walls, revealing glimpses of frozen terror on their faces. Martha bumped into Henry, her eyes wide, reflecting the same question dancing in his mind: was it possible to escape? A loud crash echoed from somewhere deep in the office corridors, silencing even the faintest whispers. Fear ricocheted around like a live wire, igniting raw panic. What was that? Someone yelled, an edge of hysteria creeping into the air. Keep moving. Mark's voice cracked like a whip. They turned into the hallway, sneakers squeaking against the polished floor, the sound drowned out by the frantic beating of their hearts. But just as they made it halfway, the lights went out again. A suffocating darkness enveloped them, disorienting. Henry's body tightened as he reached for Sylvia instinctively, but his hand found nothing. The cold terror slithered up his spine, and he spun around, searching for her, his pulse thudding loudly in his ears. "Oh no," Martha breathed, just before a chilling laugh echoed from the abyss, lingering like smoke. "Let us play, shall we?" The voice was unmistakably Sylvia's, ominous and vibrant. The air grew thicker, an electric tension sparking in the vast void. I strained to adjust, searching for even a hint of escaping silhouettes, but the hallway felt endless. What game had they unknowingly stepped into? Henry's heart raced as the awareness brought a sobering clarity. Time was running out, and soon enough, they would be forced to confront the true darkness lurking just beyond their sight. As dread settled like fog around them, one thought clawed its way to the forefront of his mind: what if the escape route was the very embodiment of the game itself? Would they discover the truth before it consumed them all? What price would they have to pay to keep laughing? Henry stood frozen, throat tight, the laughter echoing in the blackness like a taunt. It felt alive, wrapping around him, pulling him into a twisted embrace that both soothed and terrified. He jerked to the side, the walls seeming to close in, closing off every escape route. "Mark!" he shouted, his voice cracking under the weight of fear. "Where are you?" "Over here," came Mark's strained reply, close but muffled as if he were underwater. Henry scrambled toward the direction of the sound, each step slower than the last as despair clawed at him. "Where's Sylvia?" he called, but the darkness swallowed his words, leaving him alone with the tension. I don't know." Mark's breath came out shaky. "Stay together." They huddled closer, bodies brushing against each other. Henry could feel Martha beside him, her body trembling like a leaf caught in a storm. The enormity of their isolation pressed in, every gasp for air feeling like an indulgent whisper in violation of the suffocating silence. Suddenly, another crash shattered the quiet, a bone-rattling sound. It felt like something breaking free, and Henry flinched at the violence of it. Adrenaline surged through him. "We need to get out." "Move," Mark instructed, the command grounding them. It was comforting to lean on his leadership, but with every passing second, the stench of fear seeped deeper into their bones. They pushed forward, the feeling of being watched igniting a primal urge to flee. Henry's heart raced as he imagined a pair of eyes lurking in the abyss, hungry and waiting. "Do you think this is a joke?" Martha spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "What was she talking about when she said we wouldn't last?" "Shut up, Martha!" someone else hissed, fear flipping into anger. Mark's voice cut through the chaos. "Just focus on my voice. Keep moving toward the exit." But chaos has a way of twisting priorities, and Henry found himself glancing back, seeking the comfort of familiarity. "Sylvia! Where are you?" The darkness answered with another laugh. Cold, distant like a hunter savoring its prey. "Come find me, Henry." "Stop it!" he shouted into the void, the echo returning in mocking undertones. Panic gnawed at him as strands of doubt pulled tighter. What if he did find her? What if she was behind all this? "Rethink that last thought, big guy," he muttered to himself. Another echo came, drowning out his self-talk. It was a steady crackling sound, growing closer, alive with electricity that buzzed through the air. It filled him with dread, the hair on his arms standing on end. Henry clutched at Mark's arm, his heart hammering. "What's happening?" "Not sure," he replied, pulse pounding like a drum. "We need to stay quiet." The sound grew monstrous, like something being torn apart. Then, somewhere above them, a light flickered back to life, a bulb fighting against the surrounding darkness, illuminating the chaos just momentarily. In that brief flash, their worried faces were lit by pure panic and horror. The room looked ravaged, papers swirling in an invisible wind, chairs overturned, and in the corner, something shifted. "What was that?" a voice screamed. The light sputtered and dimmed again, shadows creeping back in. Henry's heart sank, knowing whatever had shifted in the corner now thrived in the dark. It was coming closer. "Hold on," Henry croaked, "we can't let it catch us." Yet, just as they turned to run, he heard a soft sound beneath the roar of fear, laughter. A playful, genuine laugh like that of a child, wispy and haunting. "Let us play a game." The voice was familiar, chilling and sweet, wrapping around his mind like velvet ropes. As the shadows closed in, crystal clarity pierced through Henry's panic. It was Sylvia's voice, echoing out, summoning them into the very game that could consume them whole. Was it too late to turn back now? A thought crashed in his mind. If they couldn't escape this nightmare, would they be the ones laughing when the game was over? And in that moment, everything shifted. Little did they know the true nature of this game, one that demanded more than just laughter to play. Would they learn the price it demanded before it was too late? Or had they already lost themselves in the dark? Henry's heart thudded like a war drum as they edged deeper into the oppressive darkness, each breath feeling like it might shatter the fragile silence. He shot a sideways glance at Mark and Martha, their faces pale as moonlight, frozen in distant terror. The laughter still reverberated in his ears, each peal like a sinister bell tolling their inevitable fate. "Keep moving," Mark urged, gripping Henry's shoulder. But there was no path in sight, only shadows pulsing with unseen menace. "Can't we just stop and think?" Martha pleaded, her voice barely rising above the whisper of the dark. "What if what if she don't say it?" Mark's voice turned harsh, cutting through the creeping dread. "We need to find her. She might be in trouble." A chill swept through Henry as he realized Mark's words were as much a plea as they were a command. "Right," he muttered, but deep down, doubt gnawed at him. What if Sylvia was entangled in something far worse? The laughter came again, brighter, igniting a flicker of hope but also shrouding them in uncertainty. "Come on. Let's play," it beckoned, its sing-song quality echoing off the damp walls, bouncing around them with cruel appropriateness. A flicker of light cut through the darkness, illuminating a twisted scene, a collection of broken toys, scattered on the floor like forgotten memories. Instinctively, they recoiled, panic surging with every ragged breath. "What the hell is this place?" Mark whispered, his eyes darting around as if expecting something to jump out at any moment. "We can't stay here," Henry hissed urgently, but even in the clutch of fear, he couldn't ignore the dread that bubbled within him. What if this was some sort of twisted maze? What if they were meant to find Sylvia not as rescuers, but as the next players in a game that had already begun? "What do we do?" Martha whimpered, clutching her arms as if desperate for warmth. Before any of them could respond, a sudden cacophony erupted, chairs scraping, laughter spilling into shrieks, and a sharp thudding sound like footsteps approaching. The atmosphere thickened, electrifying with tension. "Run!" Mark shouted, igniting the group's momentum. They pushed forward, propelled by fear, the darkness closing in like a malevolent creature hungry for its next meal. They stumbled through a narrow hallway, fingers brushing against rough stone walls slick with moisture. Each turn felt like a gamble, every step spiraling them further into chaos. The laughter was near deafening now, swirling around them in a maddening dance, masking footsteps that were too heavy to ignore. Suddenly, an otherworldly screech sliced through the air, stalling their charge. Something loomed behind them, massive and shadowy. Henry cast a frantic look back, fighting against the urge to freeze. He could barely make out a figure, but the eyes glowed, bright and hungry. Mark pointed down another corridor. "This way." They darted into an adjacent passage, fear propelling them deeper into the labyrinth of fear. But the laughter faded, replaced by the echo of their pounding hearts. As they fled, the realization pinned down Henry. What if Sylvia was not just lost, but had chosen this path? What if she was the orchestrator of their descent into madness? "Where is she?" Martha's voice tremored, the doubt seeping into her question. "He wants us to find her," Henry murmured, his throat tightening around the words. "But why?" What if Mark started, but the thought hung heavy in the air. What if they were not the hunters but the hunted, locked in this twisted game with no way out? A faint shimmer broke through the darkness, expanding like an impending storm, followed by the voice again, lilting like a cruel melody. "Ready or not, here I come." The laughter returned, wrapping around them, stifling every ounce of hope. Henry's gaze shot around, desperate for clarity in the gloom. Was there a way to escape? Or were they destined to dance to Sylvia's tune, forever entwined in a game that threatened every last shred of their humanity? "Run!" Mark shouted again, his voice a lifeline. But as they sprinted, Ahead, a question hung in the air: what was the true cost of this game? The answer loomed closer, and with that thought, a sense of dread took form once more, dark and consuming. What price would they pay to win? The walls pressed in on them, almost alive, dragging their resolve down into the abyss. Henry's chest tightened with every muffled thump behind them, each sound a reminder of the lurking danger just out of sight. "Keep going," he urged, pushing himself harder, despite the ache in his legs. What if we just stop?" Martha gasped, struggling to keep pace. "We can't run forever." "Just a little further," Mark replied breathlessly, his voice wavering. "We have to find an exit." Then the laughter returned, relentless and childish, echoing from all sides, wrapping around them like a sinister blanket. "You can't hide. You can only play." It was a taunt, slithering through the cracks like smoke. They came to a sudden halt at a T-junction. The darkness yawned before them, two dark paths diverging, each one equally ominous. "Which way?" Henry asked, his heart racing. Mark stared into the gloom, uncertainty etched across his face. "Right." "It has to be right," he insisted, even as doubt crept in. "What if that's what they want us to think?" Henry countered, glancing back, as if expecting the glowing eyes to leap from the shadows. Martha shivered, her voice trembling. "We can't trust anything. What if we're just trapped in a play?" "Enough!" Mark snapped. But the fear in his eyes betrayed him. They were really standing on the edge of madness. Instead of firm conviction, his voice wavered. "We have to act. Any decision is better than staying here." The urgency returned, pushing at their throats. Without another word, they chose the right path. The shadows loomed tall, stretching toward them like grasping fingers, the air thick with a damp chill that sank into their skin. The corridor twisted and turned, anxiety a tight coil in their guts. As they jogged forward, Henry sensed something unsettling, a low rumble beneath their feet, thrumming through the stone. "What is that?" he whispered, glancing at the others, but they seemed oblivious, lost in their own dread. Then it hit him, a realization that chilled him to the bone. "Mark! What if this place, it's alive?" "What do you mean?" Mark asked, confused. This whole place feels like it's watching us," Henry replied, the tremor in his voice cutting through the suffocating silence. Just then, a loud crash reverberated against the walls behind them, a cacophony of distorted laughter followed, echoing the torment of lost souls. They hadn't escaped, they had awakened something more sinister. Martha's eyes grew wide, fear reflecting off them. "We need to go. Now." They bolted forward, but as they rounded another dark corner, a blinding flash of light exploded before them. It revealed a room illuminated and haunting, like the aftermath of a storm. Toys lined the walls, their bright colors startling in the midst of this darkness. But it was wrong, they were too pristine, too alive. Broken dolls stared at them with hollow eyes, their faces twisted in perpetual grins, and in the center stood a mirror, reflecting a warped image of themselves, like a twisted funhouse. The laughter, now louder, emanated from within, taunting. "Playtime isn't over yet." Henry felt ice grip his spine. "We've got to turn back," he shouted, but it was already too late. The air shifted, thickening as shadows coiled tighter around them, the edges of the room bending like reality itself was warping. Mark shouted something, but Henry could barely hear over the approaching doom, the oppressive chorus of sinister laughter filling the air. Before they could react, the mirror shattered, sending shards scattering like daggers. A suffocating silence engulfed the room as the laughter faded, but in its place, a chilling voice echoed, calm yet dripping with malice. "Now, it's time to play." The shadows surged forward, dark tendrils snaking from the shattered glass towards them. In that moment, reality cracked, revealing something far worse than they could have imagined. "What do we do?" Mark screamed, panic rising. Henry stared wide-eyed as the world around them twisted further. Was escaping this nightmare even possible now? As the tendrils reached out, trapping them like prey, Henry's mind raced with one haunting thought: if Sylvia was lost to this darkness, what would become of them? And in that instant, he knew, the game was far from over. Where was Sylvia? What would happen if they couldn't find her in time? The darkness constricted around them, a living entity hungry for their fear. As the tendrils moved in, Henry felt a rush of adrenaline sharpen his senses. The air was thick with the acrid stench of decay, and somewhere in the distance, faint cries flickered like candle flames, beckoning. "Move!" he yelled, the word bursting from his throat as he grabbed Marcus' arm, yanking him forward. They darted toward the only escape visible, a gaping hole in the wall, barely illuminated by the eerie glimmer of jagged glass. Martha hesitated, glancing back at the swirling shadows. "What if we can't? What if it's worse out there?" Panic clutched her voice, but Henry couldn't afford doubt. "If we stay, we'll be swallowed alive," he shouted, pulling her along as they plunged through the jagged opening, the shards scratching at their skin like claws. They tumbled into a narrow passage, the oppressive laughter now muffled but still echoing ominously in their skulls. The walls felt tighter, the darkness thicker, as if the passage were compressing them, urging them to collapse into despair. "Keep moving," Mark gasped, his words barely breaking through the terror that threatened to engulf them. But the corridor twisted unexpectedly, leading them to a small, dimly lit chamber. The air smelled sweet, sickeningly so, like sugar gone rotten. Broken toys littered the floor, menacing and grotesque, remnants of a childhood long since forsaken. Toys that looked eerily familiar, and Henry's stomach twisted at the sight. "Look," Mark pointed, his face ghostly pale as he stumbled towards the flickering shape in the corner. It was a tattered old puppet hanging by frayed strings, its porcelain face cracked and stained. And the moment their eyes met, it grinned a crooked, sinister smile that promised nothing good. Martha recoiled. "We shouldn't be here, we need to get out." Henry felt panic slipping into desperation. "Where's Sylvia?" he breathed, the name a mantra against the rising tide of fear. "Maybe she is trapped in one of these things." Marcus' voice trembled, eyes darting from one unfortunate toy to the next. A plush dog, a ballerina, each one screamed of lost innocence. What if they turned her into one of these puppets? Just as the weight of that thought sunk in, the puppet in the corner began to twitch. Its strings rattled, and a high-pitched voice echoed from its painted mouth. "Play with us forever." Henry's heart raced, a wild surge against the sickening pull of dread. "That's it. We can't let this thing take us." He charged forward, snatching the puppet down, its eyes wide with a twisted glee. But as he yanked it free, the laughter erupted again, booming and mocking, vibrating in his bones. "No! No! We have to go." He felt a surge of panic as he turned towards the exit they had come through, but it had vanished. The wall had reshaped itself, solidifying into an unyielding barrier, a deep shadow pooling around the edges. "Martha!" Henry called, but a sudden shudder ran through the ground, the room trembling violently. The shadows deepened, stretching and converging like a pack of wolves eager to consume their prey, and then, the laughter morphed into something more sinister, a childlike giggle that sent chills down their spines. "Playtime is our favorite time." They were trapped, with nowhere to run. With the shadows clawing at their backs and the puppets beginning to stir, Henry clenched his fists. "We can't give up. We have to fight." But panic was swelling around them, swallowing reason whole like a tide. Instinct kicked in, and they turned toward a strange light flickering at the corner of the room. A doorway? An escape? Or a trap? As they hurried toward it, one of the puppets flopped to life, arms outstretched, running after them with terrifying speed. "Stay and play," it hissed, the sound laced with malice. Henry felt the pressure in his chest rise as he pushed forward, desperation clawing at him. "Go! Now!" Would they reach the door before the puppet caught them? Or would they be the next victims of this twisted game? They lunged forward, hearts pounding, just as the shadows closed in tighter. What awaited them beyond the flickering door? And would Sylvia be there, or was the darkness already claiming her? The flickering door loomed ahead, pulsing with an alien glow. It seemed to beckon them, but Henry's gut twisted with uncertainty. Each step felt heavier, the sickening sweetness from the chamber haunting his senses. "Keep moving!" he shouted again, urgency fueling his voice, but the laughter grew louder, blending with the sound of his own heartbeat. Mark was right beside him, determination etched on his face. "What if this is a dead end?" he gasped, glancing back as the puppet sprinted closer. Its laughter was a haunting echo, a nightmarish symphony that played at the edges of their minds. No choice, Henry yelled, squeezing Martha's hand tighter. The cold grip of fear slid down his spine. He threw himself toward the door, smashing against it. It swung open, revealing a dimly lit world beyond. The air was fresher, though still laced with danger. His instincts screamed that this was merely another layer of the trap they rushed through, spilling into a small alleyway filled with crumbling brick and shattered glass. Shadows flickered along the walls, darting like fireflies in the dark. But there was no time to celebrate. They could hear the puppet's laughter echoing behind them, relentless. Where to now? Martha's voice quaked, eyes wild as she scanned their surroundings. Henry felt the walls of his mind closing in again. He had to stay focused. We find Sylvia. We need to keep moving, she could be in danger. The alley twisted like the passages before, and just as confusion set in, they stumbled onto a courtyard. Broken swings creaked in the wind, and dried leaves whispered as they fell against the ground. In the center, a once vibrant scene was marred by decay: a carousel, its chipped horses frozen in time, eyes glassy and entrapped in a harsh glare. Mark's breath hitched. This place, it's like a waking nightmare. Do you see her? Henry scanned anxiously, his heart racing. There was no sign of Sylvia, but the darkness around the carousel throbbed with a life of its own. Martha stepped closer, drawn to the haunting tune that began to play. It was a warped melody, a lullaby infused with sorrow. Maybe she is here, maybe she is. Before she could finish, shadows pooled around the carousel, dark tendrils stretching towards them. The music swelled, fading into a sinister cheer. No! Stay back! Henry shouted, shielding Martha. The ground shook slightly, dislodging fragments of shattered memories. A doll's head rolled toward them, its glassy eyes filled with despair. Run! We have to get away! Mark yelled, grabbing Martha's arm. But there was nowhere left to run. The carousel whirled to life, a maddening force, and from its depths, the kites of lost memories surged forth. The puppets twisted and danced in a grotesque ballet, their laughter mingling with the carousel's haunting chorus. Henry felt the urge to flee, but he was rooted to the spot, transfixed by the nightmarish sight. Sylvia! He called, but his voice barely carried above the chaos. Then, amidst the swirling shadows and dark laughter, a figure emerged from the gloom, a flicker of red against the abyss. A girl, tattered clothes, disheveled hair, her eyes wide with terror, and yet, a strange smile tugged at her lips. Join us, it's fun here! She cried, her voice almost chirpy, but there was something off, something entirely unholy in her glee. Henry's heart dropped. Sylvia? Hope twisted into confusion, his mind racing. She stepped forward, her feet seemingly lifted from the ground, hovering just above the broken pavement. We can play together, she pointed toward the carousel, encouraging. It's so much fun, no? He roared, shaking off the paralysis. Don't listen to her, Martha. She's not herself. Mark pulled at Martha's arms, urgency turning to panic. We have to grab her and go. Before they could move, the shadows lunged like an angry tide, closing in around them, tightening like a noose. The darkness thickened, wrapping them in its suffocating embrace. As Henry fought against the pull, his eyes locked on Sylvia, now consumed in her own eerie dance. Was that really his friend? Or had the darkness twisted her into another lost soul? Fight it, Sylvia! He yelled. You're stronger than this. But would she hear him through the cacophony of evil laughter, or was it already too late? The carousel turned faster, spinning them further into madness, deeper into this hellish nightmare, and that smile grew wider, brimming with promises of despair. With every ounce of strength, Henry pushed back against the wave, knowing that failure meant losing everything. But as the darkness began to seep into their minds, he wondered, what if they were already lost? What awaited them at the end of this twisted game? Was the real trap closing in, or had it already snapped shut? The carousel spun faster, filling the air with a sickly sweet melody that clawed at Henry's insides. Shadows lashed out, wrapping around him like a cold embrace, an icy grip that threatened to pull him into the dark depths. He could see Sylvia. There she was, caught in a swirling dance, but it was as if the darkness had rewritten her reality, and the girl he once knew was fading away. Martha, we have to get out of here. Henry shouted, his voice trembling with a mix of desperation and fear. He reached for her, but the shadows seemed to twist their fingers around his wrists, holding him back just as surely as they held Sylvia in their grasp. Mark was nearer to Martha, panic in his eyes. We can't lose her. Grab her. He lunged toward Sylvia, but the invisible barrier of tugging darkness blocked him, flinging him back. He stumbled and fell against scattered remnants of broken glass, the shards glinting like teeth in the dim light. Henry's heart pounded in his ears. The laughter, the spinning, the macabre dance, everything felt like a sick joke, a twisted show put on by sinister puppeteers, and he and Martha were the unwilling players. Sylvia! He yelled again, desperation gripping him. Fight it! Remember who you are. But it's so much fun here. Sylvia's voice returned, eerily melodic and sing-song, her smile widening unnaturally. Shadows danced across her face, making her look almost otherworldly. Fun? Martha's voice quaked, both fascinated and horrified. This isn't her. She's not herself. Henry took a step closer, ignoring the pain clawing at his sides as the shadows crept nearer, threatening to swallow him whole. I know you, Sylvia. You've got to remember us. We're not. With each word he spoke, the darkness pulsed, pushing back like a solid wall. The carousel continued its dizzying dance, causing the once bright horses to fade further into black. Henry could feel the panic rising in his chest, every heartbeat echoed the urgency of their plight. Suddenly, a sinister laugh sliced through the cacophony, both familiar and foreign. The puppet had followed them into the courtyard. Its eyes gleamed with wicked amusement, watching the chaos unfold with glee. Careful now, don't lose your heads. All good playthings have their place. It sang, mocking their despair with its shrill cadence. Fueled by anger and desperation, Henry bolted toward the puppet, his body propelled by instinct. Get away from her! He hissed, grappling with the figure that seemed to distort around him, its form twisting and writhing like a mirage. Mistake! The puppet screeched, laughing maniacally. You think you can escape? You're all part of the show now. But with that proclamation, Henry felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was his chance. Martha, now! We can't lose, we fight together. He called, his voice cutting through the gloom, igniting a spark of energy that surged through him. Martha nodded, her fear transforming into fierce resolve. You're right. We have to pull Sylvia back into the light. It's the only way. With newfound determination, they charged toward the carousel, hands outstretched, fighting against the creeping darkness that surrounded them. The music reached a fever pitch, a jarring tempo that rattled their bones, as they moved closer to Sylvia. In that moment, time felt suspended. Would they pull her back, or would the darkness claim them first? The ground trembled beneath them, and the carousel spun faster, shadows lunging at them like invading forces. But they would not be cowed. Just as they reached out to Sylvia, the momentum shifted violently. The world tilted, and for a heartbeat, everything froze. A split second of silence amid chaos, then everything exploded in a torrent of sound, color, and darkness. The carousel shattered, its pieces flying like shrapnel, and Henry's last thought was a prayer that they would emerge whole on the other side. But as the shadows faded and the air cleared, he felt an unsettling tugging at his mind. What had they truly released? He turned to Martha, his heart sinking. Would they find Sylvia, or were they destined to become another part of the darkness they fought against? The echoes of laughter still reverberated around them, leaving only questions in their wake. What trap lay ahead, and would they be able to escape it before it closed in again? The air hung thick with silence, broken only by the eerie rustle of crumbling debris. Henry blinked against the fading lights, his heart pounding wildly in his chest. The shock of the shattered carousel still pulsed through him, sending adrenaline surging into his veins. Where is Sylvia? Martha's voice trembled, every word dripping with desperation as they scanned the remnants of the twisted world around them. But the once vibrant courtyard had transformed into a desolate graveyard of shattered toys and spectral figures. Henry felt a weight settle in his stomach. She has to be here somewhere. Is this what we were fighting for? Mark whispered, his voice hollow against the void, eyes darting around anxiously. What if the game never ends? Henry clenched his fists, the raw panic clashing with a determined flame ignited within him. We can't back down now. Sylvia hasn't given up, we won't either. But then a chill washed over him, the laughter and echo that made his skin crawl drifting through the shadows. It felt different now, taunting them, a reminder of a chilling promise that hung in the air. The game doesn't end here. Let us keep looking, he urged, shoving away the creeping doubt, adrenaline fueling their venture into the chaos. They stepped forward, one shaky foot after another, urging themselves to navigate through the maze of despair. Look! Martha's eyes widened, pointing incredulously at the remains of the carousel. Amidst the wreckage, a flicker of red fabric caught the feeble light, a corner of Sylvia's torn shirt peeking through a tangle of shadows. Come on! Henry shouted, motioning for them to hurry, dread fueling his urgency as they rushed toward it. The moment they cleared the debris, they found her slumped on the ground, surrounded by remnants of darker memories. A frayed stuffed bear cradled in her arms, her expression a haunting mixture of fear and resignation. Sylvia! Henry exclaimed, dropping to his knees beside her, heart racing violently as he shook her gently. You need to wake up. Her eyes flickered open, glazed and distant. Henry? The relief that washed over him was immediate but fragile, glistening with uncertainty. Yeah. It's me. We're here. We're getting out of this. He could feel the grip of her darkness still wrapped tightly around her, clouded, lost, like a distant echo of who she used to be. Help me, she murmured, a whisper barely breaking past her lips. It's hard to fight, I want to, but the shadows, they're too strong. No. Mark interjected fiercely, his determination igniting the air around them. We'll fight them together. You're not alone. You're not lost. Henry held her shoulders, looking deep into the depth of her eyes. Fight, Sylvia. Remember our friendship. You've got to break free. In that moment, Sylvia's gaze sharpened like a veil lifting. Henry the first, see the light. Martha knelt beside Sylvia, tears glimmering in her eyes. You have to focus. We're here, and we will not let the darkness take you. With an unexpected burst of energy, Sylvia pushed through the oppressive shadows, as if their grasp were made of nothing but mist. Her voice rose, fighting against the oppressive giggles of malevolent spirits wrapping around them. I remember. The roadway grew brighter as Sylvia stood, her will igniting a wave of energy that unearthed despair and darkness, releasing it into the ether. Shadows recoiled, shrieking in mortal fear as the carousel that had once bound them to a nightmarish fate crumbled away into tiny particles of light. The laughter faded, morphing into something softer, dimmer, no longer a taunt, but a distant memory they could leave behind. Now! Mark shouted, guiding them toward the light that began illuminating a path before them. The darkness seemed unprepared for their strength, it didn't anticipate the affirmation of love and friendship they invoked. Let us go. We can finally escape. As they raced toward the light, an energy surged around them, lifting their spirits and transforming fear into hope. They surged forward, heartbeats synchronized, joining together against the smothering remnants of their nightmare. Just as they stepped forth, they froze for a moment. Behind them, shadows writhed and twisted like a wounded beast retreating into darkness. I won't let the shadows keep me. Sylvia shouted defiantly, a fierce glow igniting in her eyes. And with that, they plunged into the light, feeling warmth chase away the cold remnants of despair behind them. They stumbled into a bright open space, the strange and twisted world of their nightmarish game falling away behind them like discarded memories. Henry fell to his knees, breathing in the fresh air, laughter bubbling forth from his heart. We did it! Martha cheered, overwhelming relief washing over her. Sylvia's face lit up, pure joy reflecting in her eyes. We made it! Together! Together, Henry echoed, an unspeakable bond forming unbreakable ties among them, stronger than any shadow could hope to extinguish. Let us go home, Mark wiped tears from his cheeks. And never look back. And as the four of them walked away from that terrifying chapter, laughter echoed behind them, but it no longer held power over their hearts. They took a step into the world ahead of them, into a future shaped by friendship and resilience, a promise shining brightly in the dawn of a new day. And now, before you go, I need you to do something huge to show your support. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on the next incredible story that's right around the corner. Smash the like button right now to scream back at the algorithm. And flood the comments section with your reactions. What did you think of that mind-blowing conclusion? Finally, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this amazing wave of hope. Show your true fan spirit and help keep this community alive. Let us keep the stories going.